Okay, so this is an update video to what we know about the attack in Sevastopol. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it. How do you pronounce it? Somebody who speaks Ukrainian. I want the Ukrainian interpretation, not the Russian way of saying it. Put it in the comments below. So this is an update video. Here's what we know. And I got a few things wrong, but it's generally correct. So the first thing is early reports said that they were repurposed S-200s. I got that wrong, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But here, somebody else messaged me and let me know that Andrew Perpetua actually beat the enforcer to the punch on this. It's not like I watch everything that's out there, but I saw the enforcer cover it first because I just didn't see it. But it appears that he did. Here's how he covered it when he first saw it. So here we
I
are.
have some breaking news.
Oh, go for it.
Well, there are explosions in the Inkerman area of Sevastopol, and the Kerch Bridge is apparently closed now. So that's the breaking news.
So the Kerch Bridge has been closing like once a day.
It kind of does. They're really quick to close the Kerch Bridge over anything that happens over there because they know that the Kerch is a huge target.
Like every couple days at least, for the better part of the last 10 days. So I don't know that we should put too much credit into the Kerch Bridge closing.
This is a video from Sevastopol right now. You can see by the violent shaking that things are exploding. You can't,
yeah, and you can see.
Isn't that amazing?
You can't hear the audio, but the audio sounds like this. Boom!
Now, isn't that amazing just to watch the vibrations here?
That's the audio.
I did hear it for a second.
And I'm pretty sure that can be shown on YouTube. Okay, let's look and see what Military and History said. If you don't watch Military and History, it's one of the channels I subscribe to. He does a very good job. Let's hear how he describes what has happened.
Overall, the situation hasn't changed too dramatically. The big news is obviously coming from the Black Sea at this time. First, Ukrainian forces had liberated the gas platforms on the Black Sea. We see positions here, Crimea too. Those positions, those gas platforms were lost to the Russians in 2014 or 2015. So they are right in front of the Crimean Peninsula in this area here. They were occupied by the Russians, and there are reports that the Ukrainians managed to capture radar systems here. So they were used for a military purpose by the Russians, and now the Ukrainians took them over. While there are some speculations how this can be used by the Ukrainians further, I don't think it's likely that they will put a serious permanent garrison on them. Maybe a handful of people, like 4 to 6 or something like this, to man a radar platform of themselves. But overall, the positions are far too vulnerable to missile strikes, and they are completely isolated, so that the Ukrainians will be able to put a garrison on there and maybe even some platforms to fire missiles seems highly unlikely as of this point. One of the videos is actually showing a Russian Sukhoi 27 flying over the Ukrainian soldiers of the GUR, of the military intelligence special forces that had taken it. But this probably enabled a strike on the harbor of Sevastopol, as those positions were likely being used to surveil the area and the approaches to Sevastopol. Now,
it certainly can't be the only radar, but if that was one of the major radars, it could have really confounded things. And this is what Ben Hodges was alluding to, I think, earlier.
With Ukraine taking control over them and the listening posts, the radar positions on those platforms being lost, the Ukrainians were able to strike Sevastopol. There are documentations of various damages. Here, for instance, we see a Ropucha LST, a landing ship tank, that was hit. Parts of its masts have collapsed, and
it's looking in a pretty bad way, listing and the fire and everything else.
See serious fire damage, and that should be the bridge, I think, the tower of a Kilo class, improved Kilo class submarine. Both of them were in dry dock, and we have confirmation that they have been hit. This is the ship that was hit here. The ship is very likely at least financially a complete loss. Obviously, you can repair everything if you pump enough money into it, but with this extensive fire damage, it seems extremely unlikely that this is recoverable. We see here, for instance, images of the fire in the background of the ship that had been hit here. And the damage here is also, we see the fires all over the ship. This is not going to be easy for the Russians to turn this into something useful again. But as said, like taking the look here, it seems extremely likely that this is the improved Kilo class submarine that was in the dry dock as well. We see it here on the picture from the satellite here. The Russians were using this to probably do maintenance on both ships. The Kilo class is used in the Crimean, in the Black Sea by the Russians to fire caliber on Ukrainian targets, and the landing ship was used to threaten Odessa with naval invasion initially. But there are some reports that supposedly not only were 2 ships destroyed, but 2 others damaged, and there were, like, the confusion led to firefights among Russian units that led to casualties, even KIA in this scenario. I don't see any confirmation whatsoever. It might be true, but as of now, we don't have proof, so we don't take it serious as of now. The interesting part is, though, that when we look at the images here, we see the massive damage, especially in comparison to the past, to the pictures from the day before. We see the extensive scorching, showing the fire damage, and obviously the whole structure of the boats will be massively compromised by extensive fire. So both ships should be a complete loss. The Russians might be able to repair them but financially it's probably better to just write them off and make a new one. The interesting part is, though, that while those ships were damaged in this, they were in the dry dock at the same time. And fire that destroys ships should do some damage to the dry dock as well. And this is especially important as the dry dock capacity of the Russians is very limited in the Black Sea. Initially, they planned to build dry docks in Novorossiya when it was likely that they would lose their naval base in Sevastopol. But with the annexation of the Crimean Peninsula in 2014, the Russians didn't feel any additional need. They still have floating docks there. They still have more docking capacity, but at the same time, the more they lose, the more it will put the strain on the existing capacity, and the less less maintenance will be able to be performed, the less repairs will be possible on those ships that are in the docks and in the Black Sea. So overall, the usability of the ships of the Black Sea should diminish.
Yeah, so did you hear that? So if the dry docks are limited and they just took out, so they got a 3-fer, right? Not even a 2-fer, they got a 3-fer. They hit ships, they destroyed some potentially or damaged the dry docks, reducing their capacity to be able to repair things in the Black Sea. And they have this huge psychological advantage or psychological event that, wait, they shouldn't have been able to hit this, but they hit this. What happened? And so it was pretty powerful in many regards. Here's what BBC was talking about, and this was correcting me because earlier I understood S-200 or S-300 missiles, and it turns out it looks like it was Storm Shadow.
Let's go to Ukraine now, where Sky News understands that a significant Ukrainian attack on the headquarters of Russia's Black Sea Fleet was carried out using British cruise missiles. Russia says a submarine and a warship were damaged in the attack, which happened in occupied Crimea. The Ukrainian and Western source have told Sky News that British Storm Shadow cruise missiles were used. Let's speak to our defence and security analyst, Professor Michael Clark. So, Michael, how significant is this?
Yeah, if Storm Shadow was used, and I'm pretty sure they had to be actually at that range, then that's pretty sophisticated stuff, because it's not easy to get a Storm Shadow attack of 10 missiles simultaneously. 3 of them got through, and they did some significant damage at Sevastopol. 2 ships that we know of were severely damaged. I don't think we'll see those ships again for a few years. One of them.
Okay, so apparently they're confirming that it was Storm Shadow missiles. Okay, a little bit more. Here's the Rostov-on-Don model. It's probably at a discount now. This is what the Rostov-on-Don looked like before. This is a submarine that was hit, and that's what it looked like before. This is what it looks like now. This was just a picture of the fire, if you missed this in the news. And then there's some other things here. So, for example, Ukrainian Western sources say that the British Storm Shadow missiles were deployed against here. That's what we just confirmed. This was a really fascinating perspective. I read this and I went, yeah, how about that? Russia keeps sustaining naval losses in a land war to a nation that has literally 0 major warships. I talked about this in previous videos, but that's right. So far, the score is like 0-7 for the Ukrainian Navy. The Ukrainian Navy scuttled the only ship that they had to speak of that was like a warship. I mean, like a significant warship early on. They decided they weren't going to have they weren't going to try to maintain this. They have a few little boats, but nothing of any significance. But it's pretty interesting to think in that perspective. Along the way, we had General Ben Hodges. General Hodges said raids on Crimea and oil gas platforms to eliminate radar, then a complex drone missile strike against Sevastopol. This is a very sophisticated approach to making Crimea untenable for the Russians. Now, while he's saying that, and he was praising them, like earlier in the previous video, I showed you something where he's saying it's almost like they planned this. While he's saying that, you have Colonel Douglas Macgregor, who every troll will say, well, he's a colonel and you're not. So what do you know? Okay. Colonel Douglas Macgregor, the Russians are breaking through. Colonel Macgregor, America is courting catastrophe with Russia. This counteroffensive is a complete and utter failure. The Russians press ahead and crush everything. Like he keeps going, like every one of these is, it's over. They can't possibly, total destruction. It's all that hyperbolic nonsense. And Ben Hodges, General Ben Hodges, general outstrips a colonel in rank, right? So, yeah, I mean, I'd go with Hodges on this one. So, okay. And then finally, I want to throw a pitch out there. I put this into my community for Ukraine Watch podcast. I've actually been on his show when it was just an audio podcast like a year plus ago. Dan Terlicki is a Ukrainian American. He always has serious interviews, and I would argue that you should look that up. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching, and thank you for caring. I'll be back tomorrow.